Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your delicious armor-clad hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC, and when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we got you covered. Today we will whisk you away to a land of knights, demons, and other fantastic creatures in our review of the first two seasons of the 7 Deadly Sins. And then we finally return to the harsh battlefield known as The Kitchen and the dueling chefs of Food Wars to talk about that show's third season. Hope you brought some appetite for anime. We'll be right back. The country of Britannia is protected by an order of powerful magic users called Holy Knights. Strongest among the ranks of these knights were supposedly a band of 7 warriors called the 7 Deadly Sins. Legend has it, the Sins tried to overthrow the kingdom of Leonis and were killed during their attempt. The young princess of the kingdom, Elizabeth, doesn't believe those stories, and when the Holy Knights of Leonis stage a coup d'etat, she escapes the capital, clinging to the small glimmer of hope the 7 Deadly Sins might still be alive, so that she's able to enlist their help. To her surprise, she soon stumbles upon the young boy Meliodas, who turns out to be the very leader of the infamous band of knights, and after Elizabeth's heartfelt plea, Meliodas and his pet pig, Hawk, agree to help her in finding the rest of the 7 Deadly Sins to take back her kingdom. So they begin a journey of dangerous adventures that will lead them to old and new friends, powerful enemies, mysteries and secrets, the darkest of them concerning Meliodas himself. So yeah, the 7 Deadly Sins, or Nanatsu no Taizai, once again, not to be confused with Sin Nanatsu no Taizai or the 7 Mortal Sins, because for some reason there's a show like that out there.
Well, wait. Don't you want to be confused with that trash fire of a show?
No, I don't, John. Jesus fucking Christ. You know, this irks me more than it should, than it reasonably should, but still, it's like, god damn it. Can't talk about Nanatsu no Taizai now without maybe someone confusing that shit. Although, maybe the other show's just not, well known enough to even come up in such a conversation. So maybe I'm worrying for nothing. Anyway, so yeah, the 7 Deadly Sins is based on a manga by Nakawa Suzuki, who has done several other manga as well, mostly sports and Shonen Action, if I'm not mistaken. So this one doesn't seem to diverge too much from his usual pick of genre. And the 7 Deadly Sins manga started in 2012, counts at this point 33 volumes, and is still running. Then in 2014, we got the first season of the anime, which ran for 24 episodes. In 2016, we got a 4-part miniseries called the 7 Deadly Sins, Signs of Holy War, which acts as a bridge between the first and second season. And then we got a said second season, the 7 Deadly Sins Revival of the Commandments, in January of this year, and which just concluded and ran for 24 episodes. Also, there was a movie released last month called The 7 Deadly Sins, the movie, Prisoners of the Sky. I haven't seen that yet, obviously. I don't know if there are any plans to bring that over to the West, but we'll see. The show in its entirety is produced by A1 Pictures, who we have mentioned several times before. They did Sword Art Online, they did Fate Apocrypha, they did Blue Exorcist, they did Wotakoi, which we just talked about in our previous episode, or John did. They can be a mixed bag in terms of general quality of show. For every Wotakoi you have an Alt Noir Zero or a Darling in the Franxx, which I'll get to soon enough. And animation quality can also vary a lot depending on the series. I don't know which series stuck out to you in that regard the most, both in positive and negative. I think Sword Art has a very good general high level of quality.
Yeah, I mean, out of pretty much all of A1's work, I'll give the devil its due that Sword Art is probably their best directed and best animated work. Yeah, I mean, that in working, or Wagnaria, however you feel like referring to it, those are probably the two big things that they're known for, or probably their two biggest money makers, I'd say.
Yeah, maybe. And what's the worst looking shoe you've seen from them?
Oh, jeez. I'm trying to pull one out of the top of my head. What about you?
Yeah, good question. I think I don't think I've seen a show that is consistently bad from them, at least not that I remember from the top of my head. But I've seen shows that, have very high and low peaks of quality
Yeah.
from them. And I think the animation quality level in Seven Deadly Sins is probably most comparable to Magi. Not only on the virtue of it being very comparable, those being very comparable shows in terms of genre and style and running length, but also because you got the same kind of base level of medium quality with some really outstanding ones sprinkled in between. I don't know how much you remember of Magi, but that show also has its up and downs. And I would say there are not completely phoned in budget saving episodes in Seven Deadly Sins, like there were some in Magi, especially in some of the second season of Magi. If you remember the final battle, there are some really bad ones and shoddy ones in there.
Yeah, I don't remember that explicitly, to be honest. But...
Yeah, but they definitely are in there, and I recognize them, and they get down to bad Puro levels of quality, like bad Naruto stuff, bad filler Naruto stuff, and that's not good. So yeah, like I said, A1 can show produced by A1 can go in either direction, especially if it's a longer running show, which I consider this one is, with 24 episodes.
Now I'm looking over the library of their work, and some names are starting to pop back out to me, especially some of the stuff that was supposed to be like media tie-ins, like Persona Trinity Soul or Valkyria Chronicles.
Oh yeah, Valkyria.
That should have been a slam dunk. But the first time Alicia shows up on screen, I was like, who's that? Oh, it's Alicia?
Mm. Yeah, Persona 5 doesn't look too hot either, so...
I think that's worked on mostly by Cloverworks, though, isn't it?
Is it? I thought it was an A1 show.
The Daybreakers was A1. I actually, not more than 15 seconds ago, looked it up as well.
Okay, yeah, then I might be confusing that.
Because, I've seen some grabs of Persona 5, the animation, and...
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I looked that up once I reviewed that show, which I will do. All right, one of the shows from A1 that looked like consistently bad, like really shitty, was fucking Phoenix Wright. Holy shit, Yakten Saiban. Oh my god, that's bad. That's bad. And I just saw that's gonna get a second season.
It's being worked on by Cloverworks.
Oh, great.
The same people who are flubbing up Persona 5, so poor Nick. Poor Phoenix Wright. He's destined to look like shit in anime form forever.
But yeah, so, in regards to animation quality, this is what you get. There are definitely some high points in the show when it comes to animation. In this show, naturally, in the fights. There are some fights that look fantastic, and I'll get to that later again. But yeah, the director of the first season is Tensai Okamura, who has also directed Darker Than Black, the first season of Blue Exorcist, and was the series director for Wolf's Rain, which is one of my favorite shows of all time. So yeah, that's a track record here.
To this day, I have not watched that show.
You should. Also be warned, it's a downer. So
I think it was on Toonami, or it was on Cartoon Network at one point. Like after Cowboy Bebop had its run, they're like, "Oh, from the creator of Cowboy Bebop." I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, I'll check this out." And as the stupid young idiot I was like, "Man, this is boring," and I just never went back to it. So maybe I'd probably appreciate it now that I'm,
only partially.
Now that I'm slightly less stupid than I was when I was younger.
I liked the show from the beginning. I was kind of put off by its, by its downer ending and open ending, but I rewatched it several times over the years, and I've come to really, really adore it. So there you go. Also, only part of the creators of Cowboy Bebop.
I'm just going with how it was advertised.
Yeah. I think the writing staff came over to Wolf's Rain, and the director Shinichiro Watanabe. The next thing he did was Samurai Champloo, I think. So let's put it up there. But yeah, anyway, a different show. But yeah, he Tensai Okamura has also done storyboards for a bunch of other shows like the aforementioned Magi and Full Metal Panic, and was a key animator for several older movies and OVAs. I don't know if you've watched some stuff from the 80s. Maybe.
Hit me with some names.
Yeah. Demon City Shinjuku, Mobile Suit Gundam Stardust Memory, and The Dagger of Kamui. If those names maybe ring a bell, he has worked on some of the some older movies and OVAs. He's a veteran, and for the miniseries, he handed reins over to Tomokazu Tokoro, who was an episode director and storyboard artist on the first season. He was also director of Haibane Renmei and key animator and storyboard artist for a bunch of other stuff. And for the second season, the director's seat moved again, this time to Tashiki Furuta, who again was a storyboard artist on the first season, but also on Love Live and Haikyuu, Dragon Ball Super, Tiger and Bunny, and also episode director on some of those and other shows as well. I don't think, just in terms of tone and pacing and general feel of the show, the switch is really noticeable. I assume the show is sticking very close to its source material and doesn't really diverge from that, or leave enough room to, put some very noticeable distinctions in there when it comes to those directors. But if I'm not mistaken, it's still kind of rare to see the director switch so often on one series. At least I don't remember we covered one that had so many director switches during the course of its runtime. I mean, JoJo switched definitely after the second part, I think, after Battle Tendency.
Yeah.
Or at least after Stardust Crusaders. But yeah, that felt kind of rare to me, that like during the course of these 2 seasons and 1 mini season, we had 3 different directors. So yeah, still surprising how coherent the show feels, and I guess that's can be attributed to the rest of the cast staying the same in some parts, and the crew staying the same in some parts, and the source material. And it's sticking closely to the source material. So yeah, 7 Deadly Sins is as classic shonen action as you can expect. You get a bunch of colorful characters, you get a lot of hand-to-hand combat with a lot of flashy special attacks, probably just as many destroyed buildings and boulders as in Dragon Ball. We get a small tournament in the first season. There are steadily new villains introduced, new attacks. The stakes get raised up constantly. Situations get more dire and more dangerous and everything. And the second season even introduces power levels.
Oh, jeez.
And its own brand of Scouter, which comes in the form of a little earring for Hawk. So just on paper, but this is very inspired by the shows that came before it. Where it manages to stand out a bit is in its setting, because I don't think we really had a Dragon Ball-esque show like this with a medieval setting and knights before. Correct me if I'm wrong and you can remember something.
I don't think of anything immediately. So.
Yeah, demons, yes, but not this classic King Arthur-inspired setting. There are actual characters called Arthur and Merlin in this, so there you go. And as I mentioned before, it is very comparable to Magi in that regard as well, which basically did the same thing by infusing the classic, Dragon Ball Shonen action formula into an 1001 Arabian Nights setting, with names like Alibaba or Sinbad appearing in that show as well. So these 2 shows really feel like they are companion pieces from the same kind of shonen anthology or something. It's funny. And just as Magi, this show has a bunch of, like I mentioned, colorful, entertaining characters. We got Meliodas, who is your typical young boy, super overpowered Son Goku type character. He has, at least in the beginning, this broken sword, which is basically just a hilt, but he can still dish out a lot of damage regardless. We have Elizabeth, who is, pretty much only a damsel in the beginning of the show, or let's say the first season, but becomes much more of an active player later on in the series. We got Ban, who is an immortal thief and acts as a cook later too. And since he is immortal, he gets dismembered a lot.
Oh.
He's basically the Deadpool or Wolverine of this show in terms of body damage. It gets really ridiculous. Like, at some point, he's like, why are you alive? What is happening? That's not how it works. God damn it. Are you Cell? We also got Diane, who is a girl giant, which is also a pretty rare thing. And also super interesting. And also, she's maybe the most sympathetic character in the show. Like, I really like her a lot. Diane is great. And we also got King, who is a member of the fairy folk and has this giant spear he can command with his will and hand movement. And we, of course, got 3 more sins, which I don't really want to say too much about because their reveals come a bit later, and, there are story points and mysteries surrounding them and stuff like that. So I would take maybe a bit too much of surprise away by talking about them in greater detail. But their names are Gother, Merlin, and Escanor. And the latter making his debut only in the 2nd season. So yeah, it takes quite a while to assemble all the 7 deadly sins. Of course, we also got a bunch of villains. Some one-offs, some returning, some, of course, turn over. Good old Piccolo and Vegeta style later to the heroes as well. Switch allegiances and everything for one reason or another. So yeah, this is familiar ground. So yeah, but as you can imagine from what I'm telling you right now, it's already a pretty big cast. And it gets much bigger in its 2nd season, which, just like with Overlord, is kind of a problem for the show because there are just some instances of character overkill, especially in the 2nd season. Like in the 1st season, we get a pretty straightforward story of Elizabeth and Meliodas searching for the other members of the Sins and then, trying to retake the kingdom. But in the 2nd season, for several different reasons, the main cast of characters splits up. And each set of them is going off having their own little adventures before they rejoin later. Which introduces, like I said, a bunch of new characters and can make the series feel a bit overstuffed and unfocused at times. Because, the perspective shifts a lot, and we got a lot of characters we have never heard about before and who are, like, introduced without much fanfare and like, oh, here are these characters. And it doesn't help that a lot of those characters don't really matter in the long run, at least until now, and are just thrown in there for good measure or, to make some things happen in the plot or to be killed off at a later date, which feels a bit like a shame. Some of these characters, just considering their design and what they maybe have in what relation they have with some of the other characters, feel like there should be more to them. And there really isn't. I mean, for some there still could be, but some of those characters just, here they're introduced and they're gone again. And it's like, well, okay, that feels like wasted screen time to me. And yeah, it was just noticeable in the 2nd season. It doesn't get so bad that it really bothers me, where it's like, Jesus Christ, just get to the point already, because the show is very well paced. Like, this plot is moving along steadily, and even when the characters split up, they, each their story matter to their personal character development. It's just like, it feels at some point, maybe you could have done that with the other main cast members instead of all these side characters that you're introducing. But yeah, still, there is definitely also some good character development resulting from that. And, like the stories with Ban's father and Diane's mother in there. And yeah, so it's not all bad or, just real bad in general. It's just a noticeable detracting factor. I think the most fun Seven Deadly Sins gave me was with its fights and our main crew interacting with each other. You just feel like the Sins have a long history with each other, and learning about their friendship, conflicts, and the deeper mysteries of the story connecting all of them is really good stuff. I enjoyed that a lot. And there is this like nice tradition that every big story point is like kind of like in One Piece, is bookended with a feast where they all drink and eat together and talk amongst each other. It feels like one of those cooking skits in the Tales of series that like enriches, endears you more to these characters and enriches their character relationship and your perspective on that. And the show has that a lot, and it's great seeing those characters just doing normal life stuff instead of battling for their lives the entire time. And I appreciated that. I like that about the show a lot. And like I mentioned before, some of the fights are downright amazing in terms of animation quality, action choreography. They are up there with A1's best work from Sword Art Online, definitely. Like, really, really cool, ridiculous stuff. Like the big tentpole fights that are very important for the story and have like this big surprising turn or whatever, almost always look fantastic. So, and that's always important to me. It's like, hey, if you can't make all of the show look good, at least make the big important stuff look good. I mean, that's how I could, stick with Naruto so long, because I knew, okay, if we get to the point where some really important stuff happens, the show will look amazing. And it does. And so does Seven Deadly Sins. So that's good. And there are also a lot of twists and turns to the story. Some pulled off better than others. But yeah, especially in the second season, we get a lot of surprising revelations that lay a good groundwork for the third one, which I'm very much looking forward to at this point, especially since there's like a kind of worrying development for one of our main characters, and it's like, oh, where will this go? And this is concerning. And I mean, we had that several times during the show, but this time it feels like, okay, this could turn into something really bad. So we'll see what happens, and that's cool. That's like gets me excited for the next season, and I want to see where it goes. Now, just as a warning, if you have a problem with grabby, pervy anime protagonists, Meliodas is kind of one of the worst in that regard.
Oh boy.
He constantly fondles Elizabeth, which actually makes him more of a Muten Roshi than a Goku now that I think about it. But yeah, that basically happens in almost every episode those two are together. Of course, it's always thrown in there for comedy. It's like, hey, it's funny, and it's kind of weird because Elizabeth is not your typical, doesn't have your typical tsundere reaction to it, where she like whacks him over the head with something, and it's like, oh my god, she's just embarrassed, but it doesn't really bother her. And just from the outside, that's kind of a bad reaction to being molested. Just saying.
Yeah, that doesn't seem normal.
Yeah, it's like, that feels like the anime is bringing kind of across the message that is okay because the other person doesn't mind, or usually doesn't mind in those situations, which I'm pretty sure is not the case.
Yeah.
They try to lessen the impact of that a bit, of the icky factor, by making Elizabeth fall for him for several reasons pretty quickly. And they kind of become a couple and are actually more committed than most shonen anime of that ilk in that regard, to their relationship. Like, it's a steadily progressing relationship. I mean, there's, like I said, there's some reason for that besides her just, oh, Meliodas, you great warrior, I'm falling for you now. It's not just that. There's a good reason for that, actually. And yeah, I wasn't too happy with how the show began in that regard, but I, was more and more okay with it as it progressed, because they got those two characters to a point where it felt like, okay, maybe Elizabeth would really be okay with that at this point, because, they are a legit couple. So yeah, maybe that's okay then, I guess. But yeah, there's still some little icky feeling to that. I don't know. I can't turn it off. If you have a problem with that, just be aware of it. If that stuff bothers you, which I can totally understand, because I sometimes feel the same, maybe that show is not for you. But maybe you can look past that. I managed to, at least at some point. Other than that, I really like the Seven Deadly Sins. It's not top tier shonen like, for example, My Hero Academia or One Punch Man or early Dragon Ball or Hunter x Hunter. But it's a neat little, well-paced, action-heavy show with a lot of cool fights, colorful characters, and an underused setting. It probably has one of the cutest mascot characters in Hawk as well, though he can also get a bit annoying at times, but I really enjoyed a lot of his scenes. He is kind of adorable.
Still trying to wrap my brain around a pig named Hawk.
Yeah, it's it's good stuff. He's a cool character. If you like your battle-heavy action shows, give this a chance. It's all on Netflix, and I had a lot of fun with it up to this point, and want to know where the next season takes our heroes.
All right, so next it's time to get back in the kitchen and watch some Food Wars. So we're back with Food Wars, the third plate. And our story continues as the Moon Festival begins at Totsuki Academy. Everyone's favorite, Soma, sees this as an opportunity to try and muscle in on the Elite 10 like he always does. During the Moon Festival, he sets up a stall across from the, at the time, 8th seat, Terunori Kuga, to try and prove his worth. Kuga is, like, absolutely incredible with Chinese cuisine, and Soma decides, hey, I can do that too. Kind of, sort of. It's basically like a 5-day affair, I believe it was, and basically you had to peddle your wares to the people that were coming through, and you had to make money. And if you didn't make money, then like every other plot hook in this show, your ass gets thrown out on the street and you don't get to go to Totsuki anymore. That's sort of a minor part of this season, because after the Moon Festival, it's revealed that Erina's father, Azami, has sort of come back into her life and has ousted Erina's grandfather, Senzayamon, as the headmaster of the academy in a 6-4 vote by the Elite 10. Which makes me wonder what would have happened if it was 5-5. Maybe it should be an Elite 11 to avoid a hung jury. More to the point, Azami establishes an organization called Central, through which he plans to uniformly teach the students of Totsuki how to cook according to his ideals. There's no ad-libbing, there's no changing the recipes, there's no doing your own special thing. It's his way or the highway.
Abandon all individualism.
Basically.
Join the regime.
Basically.
Yes, that's what it is. It's food fascism.
More or less. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In the process, Azami orders all of the individual research societies and clubs to be shut down because you can't do anything on the side. You have to learn to cook the Azami way. But when the students rebel against Azami's decision, many of them revolt into a series of shokugekis, all of which are rigged in Central's favor. And basically, he sends a whole bunch of his thugs to go after Soma and the residents of the Polar Star dorm. And that's when they are spurred into action in a culinary confrontation on a cross-country scale.
With trains.
Yes, that cross-country, yes. I mean, the train, the railway arc, as it were, sort of hits in the second half of the season, but it's kind of hard, I think, to call it a different arc, even though it is what it is.
Well, yeah, it's a different arc in regard to we now have this exam. This is basically on rails, and this is all leading to this big confrontation. But the first half of the third season builds up to a lot of that, so it feels like it's part of of the same thing. I think the first mini thing where the Moon with the Moon Festival, it feels more separate from that than the rest of the first half.
Yeah, but it's such a minor part.
Yeah, that's true. And there was also when this show started, the third season started, that was okay, wait, are we gonna get a in-betweener again directly after the Stagiare, their internship? Also, I'm sorry for only mentioning this now, but if you don't know anything about Food Wars, what are you doing here? We're going to talk about the third season and maybe spoil things from the first two. So if you don't know anything, check out our 20th episode first, Food Gang Wars, because that's where we talked about the first two seasons. So yeah, for all the uninitiated who still want to know what this is about, this is a cooking battling show, where chefs square off against each other in cooking battles called shokugekis, and whoever tastes their food loses all their clothing.
The most literal food porn.
Yes, exactly. And it's super entertaining and creative. So, what, John, what in general, how did you feel about this third season when compared to the other two?
I'm just gonna out and say my big major gripe is this season just kind of ends.
Yeah, that's true. Once I realized that we're like steering towards a really big cliffhanger, I was like really upset. Like, no!
Yeah. Like, I mean, I enjoyed this season for the most part, mostly because we got a nice spotlight on Erina in her backstory and her relationship with her father. And I was like, okay, that's cool. We're finally getting, some actual character side story because there hadn't been. We had gotten like breadcrumbs
Yeah.
of that up to this point, but we hadn't really delved too deep into any single character really. So I was like, oh, that's cool. And then we get to the end, and it's like that, but that's the end.
Well, they were just running out of episodes. I mean, the first season did the same thing. I think it ended right in the middle of the autumn exam, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, but then we had the understanding that, don't you worry, there's more to come. Whereas with this, there hasn't been any word yet. And I don't know if that's because I don't think we're caught up to where the manga is. I think we're still a fair number of chapters off.
I mean, it took them some time. I mean, there was not as much of a big gap between the first and second season as it was between the second and third, I think. So maybe, it's just another bigger gap because of, I don't know, production takes a bit of time, or JG's staff is doing something else. I mean, they're doing One Punch Man. I don't know how many teams they have available. And
One Punch Man and Index and whatever else.
But I'm pretty sure that Food was still successful enough, both in manga and anime form, that we'll get a fourth season. But you're right. Definitely. The question is when. How long do we have to wait for the conclusion to this? Because, there's a lot of cool stuff, like you mentioned before, built up in the season. And the show ends in a really dramatic place, which, starting out from the season, you wouldn't have necessarily seen coming, because you have this nice, quote unquote, that nice get together with the Elite 10, where it's like, okay, these are gonna be our final bosses at some point in the future, but not quite yet. And then we get like this little moon festival thing, and that's all fun and good. And then suddenly, high stakes, high drama, kind of out of nowhere, where it's like, okay, now here comes shitty anime dad to ruin everyone's day. And boy, Azami is peak shit anime dad. Holy
shit. He is.
He is the worst. He's a real asshole. And he looks it. It's amazing. There's like this thing that they did with his eyes where they grate out the whites in his eyes, so he's constantly, when he's not like in focus, or at we don't get a full detail headshot of his, but he's standing a bit in the background, it looks like his eyes are kind of almost completely black. So it's like this really amazing, holy shit, it's a demon lord. And I mean, he acts like it. And he, just like you said, he establishes like this tyrannic rule over Totsuki, where it's like, okay, now everyone has to cook my recipes and do my way of cooking. And what's the most insidious about that, he indoctrinates most of the other members of the academy by being like, hey, this is not all bad, guys. If you cook my way, everything is gonna be easier. You're gonna pass all the exams. You don't have these high expulsion rates anymore. You don't have to leave. You don't have to worry about shokugekis and everything. You just have to prepare the meal I tell you to prepare. And if you pay attention in class, you will be able to do that without problem. You get a guaranteed pass. And, everything is fine. You can graduate with fanfare and no problem and everything. And a lot of people get, like, ensnared by that. And it's like, really, so much of this feels like, oh my god, this is like World War II dad. He's dad Hitler. I don't fucking, holy shit. It's the third Food Reich. I don't know. But it's, of course, it's all in good fun. It's not like, oh my god, this is getting too dark and too serious. No, that's not what this show is. It's just, it's Food Wars is so good at taking itself seriously when it matters and making all that stuff feel really important. And all the food battles really important. All the stuff, there's a part later in the series where some characters get basically eliminated and expelled. And I heard myself uttering the phrase, when some other characters show up, thank God they're still alive. Because it feels like the other characters were killed. Because that's how the show sells it. And that's how it feels. And the fact that that worked is amazing. Because, this is only about a show of people like preparing food and then having other people taste it and, getting an orgasm. And yeah, it's amazing. And I always marvel at how good Food Wars is when it comes to taking that standard shonen formula and putting it in this weird setting and making it better. And yeah, I get that feeling a lot during this third season. I felt like in the beginning, I don't know if you felt the same, it got maybe a bit too stale when it came to like the food tasting scenes. Like in the first two seasons, it felt like we had a lot more stronger visual, let's call them visual metaphors. It feels like they're too, I don't know, not subtle enough for that. But yeah, let's call them visual metaphors for, what happens to these characters once they taste the food and what happens to the cooks who prepare it. It feels like the first two seasons had a bit stronger visuals for that. So I was a bit worried, but then we get to the second half of the third season, and we're right back into crazy mode. Like, I think the strongest thing in the first half was Soma turning from a cat into a lion when he challenges Kuga.
Yeah.
I still thought that's cool stuff, but we didn't get enough of that. And then with the second half starting, we get martial arts battles, we get fucking, I don't know, chicken Soma, we get eels flying everywhere, and I don't know, ancient warriors, Erina is Jeanne d'Arc, I think. It's so much crazy stuff.
And they even call her as such.
Yeah.
The Jeanne d'Arc of the kitchen. It's like,
yes.
What? Okay.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. I was laughing so often because of some of the imagery in this show, because it's so creatively on the nose and stupid and funny, and I loved it. I love the show for its creativity when it comes to dumb shit. It's really good. Yeah, but not only the visual metaphor stuff, I think we also got, like you said before, some nice character development in the show, especially in regards to Irina and also to Soma as well. And some of the side characters too, like which we haven't learned really anything about before. Like there's a bit about Ishiki that's interesting, that brings a bit more light to his past, and we learn a bit about the Elite 10, not too much, but a bit here and there. But I think the most interesting stuff is Irina and her dad. I think in part this is actually Irina is the main character of this third season.
Yeah, definitely.
Some of the most important developments are directly related to her and, caused by her actions and her development and everything. And that's really cool to see that character come into her own and become an important member, making connections to our other main characters, which I hope would happen, but I didn't really know when and how. And yeah, it's just cool stuff. And her relationship with her dad is this nice juxtaposition to the relationship between Soma and his dad, because Joichiro Yukihira is good anime dad, maybe a bit shitty because he's a bit of a jokester and he likes to mess with his son. He's like, I'm just a better cook than you, and I'm what do you, is this the only meal you did? Oh, I'm disappointed. But it's all in good fun, and Soma knows how to take it and everything, so it's not really bad. He just comes across as a good guy, while Azumi really doesn't. And it's nice to see those two relationships opposed to each other, or highlighted along each other in this season. I don't know, how did you feel about those two dynamics?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that before you said it, but it makes a lot of sense because, like you're saying, Joey Shiro is constantly needling Soma. Oh, how many times have you lost to me? And someone's like, yeah, shut up, old man.
Yeah, but he knows that it motivates him. It's not like a form of abuse or anything. He was, okay, Soma needs it because he needs to be pushed and he wants to be as good as I am. And it's always with, a winking eye and everything. So it's all good. He is a cool character, and he also has a relation to Erina, which is also really important for the later parts of the show. And just in general, how the story progresses between these characters and how much, actual character development they manage to put into such a ridiculous show with such a ridiculous premise is amazing to me. It's like, okay, I'm really endeared to these characters, and those characters matter to me, and what happens to them, and I want to learn more about them. And I didn't expect that when the show started out, and that lady tasted in the restaurant and got honey all over her boobs and everything. And yeah, it's good stuff. It's really good stuff. Yeah, speaking of the fan service in this show, if you are worried about this because, oh no, it's gonna be like, oh my god, maybe you're not worried and you're looking forward to that because of that. But if you're worried like, oh no, this is only gonna be a boob show and this is only, just an alibi to undress the ladies. No. This is equal opportunity ecchi. Because the men are getting undressed as well. A lot. There's a lot of naked flesh on both sides. So don't you worry. This show knows what it's doing. Like I said, in the second half of the third season, that stuff gets really creative again. And just in general, not only the food tasting scenes, but also some of the other stuff is so effing ridiculous. Like, I think there's a scene where some members of a club, the sumo club, I don't know what it's called, but those guys look like sumos. I don't know what food they prepare. Their club gets shut down and they get fucking crucified. And I was like, what? What is happening? Why?
Don't worry about it. It's not symbolic at all.
But yeah, it's great. All of the story and the theme of this season is like, okay, here's this clash between uniformity and this uniform way of cooking, and elite gourmet food has to be this one way, this one vision by this one character. And we later learn why he is that way and why he's doing that, but it's still a really misguided way and completely opposed to what should be the goal here and of the goal of the academy. Because that is all about the individualism and becoming your own chef and, making your own style of food and infusing it with your own personality and everything. And always striving for new and creative ways to prepare food. So those two ideologies clash. And, of course, there are a lot of battles to be had. A lot of dramatic battles. Like I said, the stakes get up really high. All the research societies are in danger. And the club members later too, and Erina is in constant danger to be basically taken in by her dad and being used for a sinister goal because she has like this ability of the god tongue to taste food really well and everything. And they also get really creative with evolving the form of combat. We get what do we get? We get Team Shokugekis later on. We didn't really have that before. That's really cool, and we're basically still in the middle of that. It's like the show is always just like its main character trying to do something new with its formula, and that's cool. I really appreciate that when a shonen show doesn't completely stick to its guns the entire time, but tries to evolve and tries to do some things with with the rules that it established. And that's cool stuff.
Not many shows can successfully manifest that, but I feel like Food Wars is like one of the few that does it really well and keeps itself interesting for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Like especially later on in the series when there was a certain massive heel turn that I was legitimately like, oh shit.
Yeah, me too. I was like, fuck. Yeah, good stuff. Not only in the mechanics, but also the characters. Oh yeah, speaking of characters, like I said, we get a lot, not only Azami, but also the Elite 10. There are a lot of fun characters in there. I think One of the most fun ones probably being Rindo. I think she's great.
Yeah.
She's just fun. She's a fun character. And der weiße Ritter der Tafel, he's also very fun, considering that he's the first seed, but really seems to be unsure of himself in certain parts.
Yeah.
They have a lot of fun with that. And, you know, Kuga is also really entertaining. And Ezan, which we've met before, kinda, but only slightly, is also fun because he's basically like this Yakuza boss character and has like these overemphasized grimacing facial distortions.
God, he's such a piece of shit, though.
Yeah, he really is, and he knows it. And I mean, the show knows it too. And it's really fun to see him work. And it's like, okay, now this is the shit I pull. It's like, holy fuck, you are an asshole. But a really entertaining one. It's like the show revels in its own ridiculousness, and it. All the more, like I said, amazing that it still manages to make a lot of emotional scene have gravitas and feel important. And it's like, you know, if a show gets too ridiculous, you could easily get to a point where you say, oh, none of this matters because this is all too dumb. And don't get me wrong, football is very dumb, but in a really fun and creative way. And it's also, again, in other ways, it's really smart. Like I said, when it comes to evolving its own formula and how it positions certain characters and what it lets happen to those characters and how these characters evolve. And yeah, also you learn a lot about food in the show.
Yeah.
There's, man, like so much stuff I didn't know about food, and that was really interesting. It's like, I mean, I don't know how much of that stuff is really accurate. I mean, if you have a top chef watching this show, he would probably like put his head in his hands or something.
We'll show it to Gordon Ramsay, see what he has to say.
He probably hates it. But yeah, I wonder. But for me, it was like, oh, okay, I didn't. Oh, that's cool. Oh God, and this looks delicious. Help me. Yeah, this don't. Again, what goes for the first two seasons goes for the third one. Don't watch this show on an empty stomach or on a diet because you will suffer a lot. It's painful. It's really good looking food. Also, you maybe reach a point where you say, okay, if that character does this and that, he's gonna win, and that character's that's definitely gonna happen. And then the show does something where it's like, no, we're doing it different this time. And it's like, oh, okay. So that it just doesn't get stale. And that's good. The show knows when it needs to mix it up to keep itself interesting. And like I said, the emotional parts, when they come, they matter and they feel important, you know, in the framework of the show. And because the show is so good at endearing you to these characters over the course of its 3 seasons, that development matters to you just in general, and those those emotional developments. And yeah, it's just good stuff. I mean, I think a very important part of that is the music, because you know, once those strings kick in at certain scenes, it's like, oh yes, these are the feelings. And who was the composer again, John?
It was Tatsuya Kato, a name we've brought up several times.
Exactly.
Yes, he's done all sorts of good stuff before, like Buddy Complex, Prisma Ilia, apparently the Free movie, which I wasn't aware of, Horizon, Love Live Sunshine, there's the Idol connection.
It's always somewhere around the corner.
And he's currently doing Review Starlight, which also has a phenomenal soundtrack.
Well, with that theme, I would have hoped for that. But yeah, the music is fantastic in the show, and it manages to highlight and emphasize the emotional scene and the awesomeness when someone is pulling out a last-minute ace from his sleeve or her sleeve. And yeah, it's just a production on the show. And I mean, it's not a really high production value show. I don't think I've seen anything from JC stuff that is. It's not like this is, you know, super well animated, or there's like these ridiculously well animated scenes, but it doesn't need that because all the moments in the show are super effective and super well staged, and have all the impact they need just through the virtue of, the music, the style, the ridiculousness going on in the scene itself, the character relationship, your connection to the characters and everything. All of that show, again, feels just really well put together. And it just works. It just works really well. I think the only thing that bothered me personally in the show, not so much the ending, because I'm pretty sure there will be a 4th season, and I can wait for that. There have been worse cliffhangers for me, I guess, and with a more dire perspective in regards to, will we ever get a new season of that? I don't have that with Food Wars. What troubled me a bit is that once things start kicking and Azami appears and everything, a lot of characters are introduced that I expected more from, especially like these foot soldier characters of his, which are not part of the Elite 10, but I expected them to be like the force to be reckoned with before we actually get to battle the Elite 10. And then there's just this one Shokugeki against one of those, and the others are kind of glazed over, and that's that. And they were kind of prominently featured in the opening, and it was like, okay, that's it. I expected more to see more of them. That was just weird to me. It felt like, okay, did they skip something? Did the manga have more of those characters? Did we not see the other battles? Did they just take those out because they wanted to quicken up the pacing or something? I don't know. It just felt like, okay, these characters were just thrown in there for good measure. Like I mentioned in the review of Nanatsu no Taizai, like in the 2nd season, just to stuff out the character roster for one reason or another, and weren't really that necessary. But yeah, aside from that, I thought this was a great 3rd season.
Definitely.
What are your overall thoughts? Just excluding the mean cliffhanger at the end.
I think this is a series, with the exception of a couple of characters, that goes out of its way to make you like its entire cast. Because I mean, obviously, you know, characters like Azon and Azami are just like boo, but everyone else, it's just hard to not like them. Like there was. During the brief part of the Moon Festival, there is one scene where it's like, oh, it's all the warriors coming together. And that was probably one of my favorite parts of those early episodes. So, just seeing everyone being like, yeah, and just hyping each other up and getting together and doing the thing. And you're like, these are all really good friends. It's great. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I also feel like the show is really putting an emphasis on especially the connection the characters in the Polar Star dormitory have formed, and how important that is for the fights that happen in the later part of this 3rd season, and the connection these characters forms, and especially to Irina's development when she gets integrated into that group, how that changes her and helps her become someone else. And I really appreciated that. And like you said, when all those characters work together to achieve a specific goal, it's great. Like, the setup for the team battle and everything, and you can't describe it as anything else as a cooking jam session. That was also fantastic. It was like, damn, yes. That's just cool.
All the kids trying to get Irina, hey, why don't you taste my food? Taste mine, no, try mine.
That was also good. Like, the series has so many high points when it comes to character interactions. And it's just filled to the brim with fun and amazing people that you want to spend time with. And it's very important to keep you going for a rather long series. I mean, how many episodes do we have at this point? This season had 24 episodes. How many?
Including OVAs, I think we've crested over 60.
Yeah, so there you go. It's quite a time investment. So if you haven't dived into Food Wars yet, I would say it's totally worth your time, even if you think, 60 episodes, that's a bit a lot for a show with such a premise and, the edgy stuff and everything. I urge you to give this a chance. It's good stuff. It's not only good stuff, it's great stuff. Like, it's probably one of the best shown shows I've ever seen. Not classic shown like you would expect it. I mean, there's no literal hand-to-hand combat. There is a metaphor for that uses hand-to-hand combat, but that's not really what happens. But yeah, I think everything about that show is super fun and entertaining and well-paced, and yeah, always manages to surprise you and bring you joy in a new way. So definitely, if you're not checking this out, I think you're missing out, really. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the 4th season, definitely. John, do you have anything to say in conclusion?
I think you hit on all of it. Just win season 4, man.
Exactly. So yeah, like I said, in regards to this 3rd season alone, because we have already talked about the first 2 in another episode. In conclusion, the drama, the stakes, I think the show upped itself in all areas, at least in the second half of the 3rd season. I loved it. And I'm super hungry now because I was thinking about the food in the show while talking about it, and I want to eat it all. So we have to end this here, or I'm going to bite into my fucking microphone. So if you love ridiculous shonen anime, or anime in general, or hell, just food in general, go watch Food Wars. It's a blast. I can't imagine how the show can outperform itself yet again after this season, but I'm so looking forward to finding out if it's able to pull that off. Until then, have a good day and enjoy your fucking meal. And that is a wrap on the 57th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to virt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for some interesting articles linked in our episode release posts. Follow us on Twitter at AnimeBrainFreeze. We tweet regular updates and fun anime-related stuff there. Leave us comments and questions on Facebook and our YouTube channel, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next show. Macht's gut.
Take care, everybody. On the next Anime Brain Freeze.
Dragons in disguise.
If you die in the game, it's just a game, right?
And we grab our bikes and reach for the top of the podium.